August 29th, 2011 marked the 6th-year anniversary for the worst natural disaster in the United States history, Hurricane Katrina. It was an extremely underestimated disaster, leaving part of the United States in absolute turmoil, while the rest of the U.S. could only watch in misery. Coming home from visiting their daughters in Texas, Judy and Danny Rowinski heard that a hurricane was going to hit Mississippi and Louisiana. Upon hearing the news, neither were troubled, as they had been a part of many hurricanes before. The only thing that they thought would be different would be the intensity of the hurricane itself. On the day that the hurricane hit, Judy went to work at her hospital, knowing that they would need help. The hospital was in Slidell, 3 miles from the hurricane. Once the hurricane hit at around 5 a.m. on August 29th, the wind and rain immediately shut the power off at the hospital and began flooding the first floor. Nobody could drink the water because it was immediately contaminated and the air conditioning couldn't be maintained. After Judy's shift, she tried to get some sleep, but was awakened by the sound of cracking glass. Water began pouring in, causing everybody to leave their rooms and move into the hallways, and doctors were forced to perform emergency orthopedic surgeries. There were no deaths in the hospital, but a few injuries. Back in Hickory, Danny Rowinski was at home filming the entire storm. He witnessed power lines fall down and many trees had collapsed. He was forced to go back inside because of the severity of the storm, only to find that a tree branch had pierced his ceiling, which let water pour into his house. The next morning, Danny was unable to walk on the ground outside his home because of how many trees had fallen onto the ground. Houses were torn apart, cars were halfway down the street, and the roads were completely blocked by trees. Life in New Orleans was miserable. Another eyewitness account of Hurricane Katrina is Diana Jackson. Diana Jackson lives in San Francisco, California, and was in New Orleans for her grandmother's funeral service. Hearing about Katrina, Diana tried to book flights back home as quickly as possible. The earliest flight she could find was on August 28th, the day before the hurricane was supposed to hit. She remained at a hotel for that night and stayed there a little longer than she had expected. Her flight ended up becoming canceled, and there was no other way of transportation out of New Orleans at the time. During that night the hurricane hit, she was in her hotel room listening to the wind and rain, thinking that it would break through the glass at any second. She described it as a very long earthquake. The morning that the hurricane hit, all members were evacuated to a large ballroom on the 3rd floor of the hotel. The power went out and there was no more fresh water. The hotel provided 3 meals for that day, but was forced to provide only 2 meals a day starting the next morning. The hotels were locked because of theft and gunfire, and many people began leaving the hotel. Diana Jackson found a ride with 3 men who worked at the hotel and whose houses had been completely demolished. She was able to fly home safely.